Okay, good afternoon, folks. We're now live online. This is being recorded on Google+. As you know, Tessa had a little oops, and so she's asked me to sit in the chair today. As a result, we're going to have a slightly different agenda, but the most important thing is to kick off with how you do your study. And there's 5 of us here in the room at the moment. 3 of us you'll have heard from in the past. So I suppose we really ought to start with John Lyle and put you in the hot streak first, John. And can you give us a little bit of a rundown on your study, how you do it, whether you're a tree constructor or a name gatherer, or you do a bit of both, or whatever?
Sure. I have 3 one-name studies, which I handled each one of them slightly differently. I have a small one-name study of the Ridsdale surname, which is primarily a Yorkshire name, and that surname I do almost exclusively by tree reconstruction. I gather the data and what other data I have, and then build trees around it. I would say that currently I have about 75% of the pre-1911 Ridsdale data fairly well organized in my trees already, and I have a website using TNG where I publish that data. I build the trees in Legacy. The next one is Davidson, which I handle very differently. It's basically data accumulation with tree reconstruction of one family that we've identified through the DNA studies. I not only have the project, but I'm also the DNA administrator for the Davidson surname. And I'm genealogist for Clan Davidson in the United States. With that moniker, I therefore do not really do the Davidsons outside the United States, because I have other people who do the Davidson work outside the United States, like Nick Hyde, who's a guild member, is my cohort for doing the UK Davidson families, which of course covers Scotland and England and such, and he's very thorough on that, on accumulating the data there with tree reconstruction as he can. My third name is Stedman, where I not only have the DNA group and the registered surname, but I do reconstruct trees worldwide. I'll accumulate the data and then move the data into the trees as quickly as possible. I've been building the trees now for 20 years, long before I joined the guild. Any questions? That's maybe a high-level summary of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I suppose, look, you say that for the Davidsons, various people throughout the world are doing this. Do you have one view of all of that data, or are you each keeping your own databases, or what do you do with that data, or don't you pull it together at all?
This is one of the reasons I asked about the Constitution issues and the co-registration issues and such, because we'd like to be able. I'm looking forward to Nick Hyde being able to join the surname registration, so that it's obvious that he's handling the UK work. There's another genealogist who handles Davidsons for Australia, New Zealand, and a fourth for Canada. But I basically also do a lot of the Canada work. We coordinate a lot through the DNA project, which is one DNA project worldwide. which I have 5 co-administrators for that project. We have over 400 people in the project now.
Okay, so at the moment, do you pull all that Davidson data together worldwide or not?
No, we do not have a coordinated single place for all of the data. This is the challenge that I addressed with several people recently, including Peter Hager on the Constitution, of trying to handle a large surname. I got in trouble with Peter Copsey recently submitting surnames for a marriage challenge because for the Newcastle challenge, for instance, I was able to submit over 1,000 Davidson surnames.
I think he had a heart attack.
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue is that the guild, a lot of the guild services are not scalable to a large surname, and that's something that we have to address. And Davidson I don't even consider Davidson one of the larger surnames. I can't imagine how David Hall in Cheshire handles the Hall surname.
I think, to be fair to the challenges, though, John, the guild services are provided in this particular case by members giving up their time as volunteers. So to expect the guild to provide a service, to provide a full extract of a large surname from 1837 to 1911 is unfeasible, right?
No, I know that, but what the idea is, the vision of the services is based in my view on people with small surnames, small representation surnames in the UK.
Well, I mean, 10's better than none. 20's better than 10. If you can give some or get some, then some is better than none, John. It's just
I totally agree.
Okay.
But the idea is, what I'm saying is that that's just an example of where the guild does its rules and such like that make it difficult to run a large surname study seriously and pull all the data together, because a large surname has just so much has so much data that can be managed. We have in the Davidson DNA project identified I think it's pretty close to 40 biological Davidson families so far, and a family is defined as having 2 or more not closely related people with the same DNA. And of those 40 DNA families, basically some of them are very large. Like, I have a database of just DNA family 1, which is the Davidson family which I'm associated with, which is over 30,000 people.
Sure. I mean, maybe I'm measuring it differently, though, John. I mean, in my mind, if I get 2 marriage certificates, then that's equivalent in value of about £20. That's paid for my membership fees for a year. So if I can get 2 certificates a year, then I'm already in the money, so to speak.
Well, Bob, that's not the issue. The issue is don't think just of the marriage challenges. I'm just saying, trying to manage the data to fulfill your obligations as a having a registered surname, which is accumulating all the data. There's no way that I can accumulate in my lifetime all of the data for the Davidsons in the United States, let alone the Davidsons worldwide.
No, sure, but I don't think there's an expectation for you to apply for certificates. I didn't sign up to spend what would that be? That would be the thick end of now £7,000 on the birth certificates I'd need for the UK, the marriage certificates I'd need for the UK, or for the deaths. So far, we've worked on index entries. I treat the certificates I get as gravy. I don't believe there's a requirement to apply for all the certificates. I mean, to get the index entries that's readily available, certainly.
Okay, no, you're keeping on focusing back on the marriage challenge. I mean, my putting in a large number. I mean, I put in when I apply for when I see a marriage challenge, I just go into free BMD and build a list of the available ones, and I strike out anything that I currently have. And I apply for the Davidson ones strictly because I hand all of that data to Nick. I mean, myself, I don't look at it. But now I basically, because of and this last month was the first time I've had a problem with it doing that. So what I'm going to do now is let Nick apply for them in the future, and not deal with the Davidsons from the UK.
Yeah, I think the problem that we've got, John, is that, as you rightly say, the vast majority of studies are relatively small in comparison with something like Davidson, or let alone Smith or Jones or anything like that. And I think that's part of the problem, that of our 2,600 members, probably 2,570 or 80 have got relatively small studies in comparison with the size of something like Davidson. And I think that what you're doing here is maybe breaking new ground, shall we say, and as a result we're going to have to rethink perhaps on what we do and how we do it going forward if we are going to get more of these large studies.
But I think that one of the as you can all tell, I'm not from England. I'm in the United States. You will see that in many respects we can take a small study from England, and it becomes a large study when you include the United States and its records. Just because of the larger numbers of people that we have. I mean, in the United States, I have to deal with Davidsons of not just Scottish or English origin, but I also have to deal with them from Scandinavia and Russia. And it complicates the matters sometimes considerably.
I don't know what to say to that, John. Obviously, big studies are big challenges, and we're certainly going to have to look at this, I think, going forward. Joyce, can we come to you, and can you tell us a little bit about how you do your study, whether it's horizontal, vertical, mixture, or anything else? Don't forget your mic is muted. No, maybe Joyce can't hear us or isn't there. Okay, over to you then, Paul. How about you? Do you want to give us a brief rundown on how you do it?
How I do it? I started with births, deaths and marriages from the GRO index. Followed up that with trying to link those births, deaths and marriages to the census records from 1841 to 1911. And if it means straying across because they emigrated, I will do so. I've got lots of information about the states, but nothing in a database. It's all written down in about 20 odd booklets, which I've got online, but I really know nothing about it really. I know that the two main firsts, if you like, in the States, and that's about it. So I add information as we find it. Basically, if somebody gets hold of me and says, "What can you tell me about this?" I'll have a look. So it shoots off at all different angles. I've got the Australian electoral records in a spreadsheet that need to go in. I've got the Canadian 1921 on a spreadsheet what needs to go in. So it's just a matter of putting it in. Really.
Yeah, but that's talking about the data pool. But so from what you're saying, you're primarily a data gatherer rather than a tree reconstructor. Is that right?
No. I would say as we're stepping along with a family construction. I mean, there's so many John Featherstone, Thomas Featherstone, or William Featherstone. It can be a challenge, and Weardale, where the majority come from, is a nightmare. But we, as we find stuff, we'll try to produce a family tree or put it in a family group. But it is quite difficult in Weardale and North Yorkshire for the same reason.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Over to you then, Bob. Your turn.
Right. I mean, are we talking about starting in a new country, Colin?
No. What Tessa had put here was just to talk about how you do your study, as we did a couple of months ago on the European and Australasia. So it's about whether it's a horizontal or vertical, whether you do a mix and match, how you actually do you do tree reconstruction solely? Do you do data gathering solely, or what?
Right. I'll touch on the new countries at the end then. I started off with doing surname distributions to find out where the vast majority of mine were, because mine's as a place name surname. I used the results of that analysis to prioritise the record extraction around Barbados and the UK. There's many more Cumberbatches in those two countries, and my personal interests are in Barbados. So I then went to the Family Record Centre, Family History Centre, got all the films for baptisms and marriages and burials, and went through those systematically, extracting each one of the variants. At the same time, back when I started, the Family Search guys had the best record coverage for at least the Barbados and for Cheshire at the time. And then later, Find My Past came along with the church register images, so I was able to extract those. I then turned to the UK stuff, just because there's more records. Barbados is essentially done in terms of what's available to me. The UK was then do the BMDs, drag them out of the indexes, drag all the census entries, and then I headed off to the US. But folks from my study didn't appear in the US until about 1900s and afterwards, so that's been less of a priority until I'm ready to sort of join up the tree. That approach, though, is pretty dull and boring. The stuff that's interesting is putting people into trees and arranging them into families. And I kind of left that till last, and I probably regret doing it that way, to be honest.
Okay, Bob. Thanks. You were talking about going into new countries. Do you want to touch on that now, or should we come back to that?
We can come back to it, but the first place I go to for an unusual country, or one I've never visited before from a genealogy point of view, is head to Family History Research Wiki. It's a bit like Januki. They list all of the resources that you might expect to find for a country, and that gives me some idea about what record sets might be available and what records they might have available for me to use. But we can come back to that.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Bob.
Could I interject something?
Of course, John.
On this subject, some people talk about how they record their data and such like that, as the databases from the record sets. one of the points that I wanted to make about how I did it is that I take my data and immediately put the data as quickly as possible into Legacy, and store, instead of using Excel or some database, some traditional database. I try to put it within a family structure, because even if I can't reconstruct the family, I can record the event that's recorded as something attached to an individual, and then at some later time try to associate that with someone I've put into a formal tree of people.
I think conceptually, the issue I had with that when I started was I wasn't sure how to index all of the names, say, in a will. Let's say there were 4 people. You could attach the will to one person. Okay, you can create 4 people with the same source, for example, 4 different people with the same source. But I found that after you've got several hundreds or possibly thousands of individuals in your database, finding that the relationship between those 4 people, they might as well be put in a bottom drawer, never to be found again. But one of the neat things in Family Historian is you can have an associated person, so you can link those 4 separate individuals together using Family Historian, and that basically helps you connect the 4 people that you found in a will. So I think were I to be starting today, I would be looking for that kind of functionality in a piece of software.
What do you mean by associating, and what do you mean by names in a will?
Well, associations basically tie together behind a person. Let me run up my Family Historian just a second. I probably won't be able to find someone that's done this.
Well, no, what I'm talking about was, talk about what you mean by names in a will. Do you mean by, if I find a will and I want to record that in my database, and it mentions this is the primary person, and he mentions his wife and the names of children, I'm going to record that as a family group.
Yeah. What about someone who's named but without a relationship specified?
Without
like
a name?
Yeah, like an executor or just someone that's a beneficiary in the will.
Yeah, you can do that in TMG.
Okay.
And you can do it in Legacy with the shared events, where I can share that event with a person who's unnamed.
Let me show you how it can be done in Family Historian. I think that's the kind of functionality that allows you to get away from a traditional database. I don't know if you can see this on the right-hand side. This is the main individual, the wife, the kids. If you click on this associated fact, you can associate other people and identify the relationship if you know it. So
okay, in Family Historian, how does that export in a GEDCOM?
It doesn't. It uses GEDCOM natively.
Okay, see it in Legacy as a shared event. It'll actually identify it in the GEDCOM, so that you can so that especially when TNG supports shared events, which should be soon.
Oh no, sorry, John. I'm making myself clear. Family Historian uses GEDCOM natively, so it stores all of these relationships in GEDCOM. It doesn't.
Yes, but what does the GEDCOM look like in terms of how could someone then take that GEDCOM and import it into another program?
Well, you just pick up the GEDCOM and upload it to whatever you like. I do that.
I think what you're missing, Bob, is I think that John's saying what GEDCOM tag does it use to associate that person with the main individual?
I have no idea. It's like asking me how the carburetor works on a V8. I've no idea.
I must admit I don't use that function, otherwise I could tell you, John. What I'll do is, if you want to carry on talking, I'll pull up the Family Historian trial or default database, see if I can find one in there, or I'll make one in there, and then we can have a look at the GEDCOM and see what it looks like.
Because the Roots Magic and Legacy basically share the same GEDCOM for shared events, and that's I think the equivalent of what Bob's talking about with associated events.
No, it's not. I don't think it's an associated event, and I don't think it's an associated fact. It's an associated person, but quite how the two people in the GEDCOM might be sharing a common GEDCOM tag, I just don't know.
So how do you show your data on the web, Bob? Or?
Yeah, I do, Paul. I use TNG for that. So I just use I do have to export to another GEDCOM format just to get the character encoding for British pounds to UTF-8. But other than that, it's exactly the same GEDCOM.
Okay.
Does the TNG represent your associations?
Let me try and find one. Hold on.
Under pressure, you Bob. Come on.
You're quite right. Hold on.
Well, he's looking up. Paul, is it true that you're in Stockton-on-Tees?
Yeah.
Ah. The last living Ridsdale of my family lived in Stockton-on-Tees.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was my mother's cousin, and I used to visit there several times, a couple of decades ago.
Right.
Beautiful little town.
Was.
Was? Well, that was. Well, when I was there, it was
it's
almost
gone down the hill slightly.
You know.
They shouldn't have introduced out-of-town shopping because it killed the high street. The high street is full of gambling shops, bookies, the odd pub or two, and all the rest mainly are charity shops. That's how bad it is.
Oh.
Can we shift this back on topic, guys? Right, while Bob's going to play there, I'll give you a brief rundown on mine. Like Bob, I use Family Historian, but I must admit I haven't used the associated individuals the way that Bob has. I started off like Paul, I suppose, and like some, actually downloading all the data from FreeBMD, etc., and putting it into a spreadsheet. But what I then did is I then exported that spreadsheet into Family Historian and created a database, basically a Family Historian database of individuals, and then started adding flesh to the bones. But like Bob, I got pretty bored with that and decided that that wasn't the way I wanted to continue. And so now what I do is I basically work through one individual. I pick one individual in the database, be it an American one or a UK one, and I then go searching for them in the census and track them down through the census and do a full family reconstruction backwards and forwards as far as I can, and use the Find Duplicates feature within Family Historian to make sure that I haven't got those individuals that I've recorded separately elsewhere. So I started off being a name gatherer, but now I concentrate on doing the family in inverted commas.
Yeah, there is an advantage of getting all the data first, because I think that if you don't do that, you're liable to pick the wrong one. Well, in my case, I've got quite a lot of Featherstones. I don't know how odd your name is, if you know what I mean. Don't you think that? So you need a data set to work on. I mean, I've come across it before. When you're working backwards and forward, you think that person doesn't belong to that family. I've picked the wrong one. When you're looking at another family. No?
No. What I do, Paul, is that if I say I got a Thomas Lefevre and I find him as a son in the census record, I then do a quick search to see if I've got a Thomas Lefevre in that area with a date of birth or a date of death or whatever else, any other data that ties him as a likely match. And I then look at the record where I got it from to decide whether he is or not. And if I'm not sure, I don't do it. I create a new Thomas Lefevre. Mm-hmm. And what I do is once a month or so, I run the find duplicates plugin within Family Historian, which then goes through and looks at them all, everybody in the database, to say, actually, with this data now that you've got that added to this person, these two are a possible match, so compare their records.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way I do it. And I think that I'm slowly but surely getting rid of the solo members in my database as a result.
I think we all do that, don't we?
Yeah, but I'd rather not have them as hanging on there by themselves. I'd rather have them in a tree, particularly when you do get contact from somebody who says, "Oh, have you got anything on Fred Smith, born in 1853?" and you've got half a dozen to choose from. But in fact, probably three of those, you've only got three individuals, but you've got 6 records. And so when you've got them tied into a family group, it's far easier to answer that inquiry, or that's what I think anyway.
No, I just found it easy. If I found the census record.
Does Family Historian give you clues as to who a new name that you're adding might be in your database? If it's a duplicate?
No, you actually have to ask it, have you got any duplicates?
Okay, because the new version of Legacy has a feature where you can actually, as you enter a name, it will look up to see whether or not anyone in your database seems to match, and you can make a decision whether or not the new data you're entering is a duplicate or not, a duplicate person.
TMG does the same.
As this, and I think Family Tree Maker also does that. One of the things that I do when I enter a name without, like from a marriage record, when I don't have the details of who the person is that I will do an estimated birth date for the person. And I add it as a private, basically a date that is not going to get published. But that way it sorts the name in the index.
That's right.
Into the right part of the index. So like, I'll have maybe 200 John Stedmans, and if I'm looking for the Stedmans, I'm going to John Stedman. I'd like to know that this John Stedman was born in maybe the 1720s, or estimated at the 1720s, and then I can see if it compares to any of the ones that I currently have, and whether or not it, locationally might match or something like that. I find that is a convenient way of doing the tree reconstruction.
Yeah, I tend to do that too. But you can be totally wrong with the second marriage, and it doesn't tell you it's a second marriage.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
But at least I know that if the person's in the 1700s and not in the 1900s.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I can show you the linkage. I can't quite get under the bonnet yet, but can you see the screen okay?
Yes.
Yep.
So this is the detail about the individual, this guy called James Cumberbatch. It's got an associated person to him of someone called Samuel Hussey, and you would select the individual through this drop-down box, and you can specify in text what the relationship is between this person and this person. And I know from the source citation down here that it was the will of James Cumberbatch, who was a tanner of Nantwich, for example. Mm-hmm. So when I transfer that to TNG up on the web and search for William Hussey, it shows he has an associated individual called James Cumberbatch with a relationship of cousin. So I have to put that association in on both people, but now I know that if I look for Samuel, there is some relationship, in this case a cousin, between these two individuals. I did find on the admin there's an associated custom event. You can associate individuals, families, sources, or repositories.
Yeah, TMG uses the witness, and you can specify what type of witness, so it still works very similarly. So
Right.
you can have you can have any type of association you want with. You can make it up as you go along.
Right.
Now, when you say that you put in an association, did you have to put the association onto to the Samuel Hussey, or was it already there?
I have to put it in on both individuals. So I have to associate James with Samuel and Samuel with James.
Okay. Well, see, I think you're somewhat strangely muted, Bob.
No, I can hear it fine.
Well, I can hear him, but there were times when he was that his mouth was not going at the same time the sound was coming out, at least as I saw it over here.
Right.
But the shared event capabilities within Legacy basically cause that to happen automatically, without you having to make the entry into the other person.
Yeah,
and you can associate a shared event with either someone in your database or create a new person within your database if the person isn't already there.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure shared events are shared between people, but a will is not necessarily a shared event.
Well, a will is considered the event, and what you're doing is you're sharing the will with people other than the person whom you've assigned it as the primary. It's the will of John Smith, and Samuel Hussey, for instance, would be the executor. In Legacy, you can specify that the person is their role within the will is as executor.
Yes, but I'm not putting a will as an event for Hussey because it wasn't Hussey's will.
You just put him down as miscellaneous.
Yeah, if I can just interject here, John and Bob. In fact, looking at the JEDCOM standard, there is a standard JEDCOM tag ASO, which is associate, and it associates two individuals together with their roles of association. So it's a standard JEDCOM tag here that Family Historian is using. That's why TNG is reading it as an associate entry when Bob bungs it into TNG. And I would presume that Legacy likewise uses that tag in some way, shape or form with the way you're describing it, John, as well. So association as an individual is in fact a defined JEDCOM tag.
Yes,
but even link friends together.
That's not a shared event.
No, it's not a shared event, but it associates individuals. In the JEDCOM standard, what it says is an indicator to link friends, neighbours, relatives, or associates of an individual. That's the definition of the associate tag in the JEDCOM standard. So you can, if your family history program understands that, you can associate individuals together just purely as friends without an event. So it's not an event association, it's a personal individual association. It associates two or more individuals together. So in our instance, we could have a record of the whole of the guild, and we are all associated together, even though we're not related.
Or share any common event.
Or share any common event, yeah. But it isn't event related, it is individuals, how they're linked. Bob is using the event to make that association rather than the association driving the event.
And I think it's that functionality, for example, that allows you to use a family tree program to add all the names you find in a document, whether you know the relationships between the folks mentioned in the document or not.
because yes, because then you will have the name of that individual in the database with no further details, BND data or census data or anything else. What you've got is purely that they are associated with an individual at a time and place.
That's right. And if you do find, the same name associated with other documents or people, like a witness on a marriage, for example, then, as in this case, it's been explicitly said that he was a cousin, but that they're not always so forthcoming.
Yeah. Joyce, are you back with us yet? Can you hear us? Can you talk to us? Don't forget you're muted. Let's
Okay.
see. You're with us. Do you want to talk about how you do your study? Are you a tree or an individual gatherer, or a mixture of both? You're muted again, Joyce. Yeah, can you talk? No, you've gone muted again. You were unmuted for a minute.
I don't know.
Yes, you're on now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Joyce. Yeah, you're live. You're talking.
Okay. I use a mixture of. Sometimes I collect data. I have all the UK census, all years in a spreadsheet, and then I have like over 7,000 individuals in my legacy database, and so mostly I try to construct families and lineages so that I can, because I get bored with just putting in sentences and and anyway, I didn't really want to be in the room today. I thought there'd be more people.
Well, it's nice to hear how different people do things, even though you just wanted to listen. So thank you for joining us.
I'm allergic.
And in fact, Marie has posted on online. Marie Bayat has posted that. Let me pull up exactly what she says. Where are we? Typical. I've lost it. What does she say? She says, I started as a tree builder, and when one is unaccounted for, I search the world for them. This has meant getting films of church registers and recording them and harvesting them from Family Search and Ancestry, etc. as I go. So it looks like Marie is very much a tree builder. She says she started as a tree builder. I don't know whether that means she is actually continuing as a tree builder now or not, but certainly that's what she's doing. Right, Russ has posted a couple of comments. Family Tree Maker does have a fine duplicate person feature, but when you try to enter information with the same name or dates, you will see a warning and have the choice to merge them or add as a new person. And the other comment that Russ makes is, sorry, how can a will be an event? Isn't a will a source? I think a will is both. Maybe the probate is the event, maybe, and the will is the source, maybe. Although probate entries are different to wills, of course, because you have a probate register and a will.
Yeah,
so,
interestingly, Colin, I tend to have the date of writing the will as an event for the person who wrote it, and the date of when the will was probated, and obviously that should straddle the date of death, ideally.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Ideally.
John, seeing as you're late to join us, do you want to give us a quick couple of minute rundown? What do you do, trees or data? Which are you, or both?
Late? I thought I was early.
No.
Oh, right.
4:30 UK time we started.
I was digging the garden. Right. I'm a tree builder. Even though I have a vast database, I build trees wherever I find them. Somebody very kindly sent me a recent death today from Suffolk. A guild member sent me it, and I'm struggling with building the tree. It's a struggle.
So were you all, bearing in mind you've been at this game of one name studies for rather a long time, John,
40
is
years.
that yeah, I know, I didn't want to give away your age.
My age. It's a lot thicker than that, I assure you.
Did you always start doing trees, or did you start gathering data at the beginning and then migrate to trees when you found that wasn't working?
No, it's the other way about. I started with tree, and when I found that wasn't working, I started gathering.
Right. Okay.
Because I basically know very little more now with my tree, other than I filled in some of the gaps, than I knew when I started. But though I didn't start with my tree, I started with the tree of Sir Ralph Abercrombie, the British commander of the Battle of the Nile. But that's another story.
Okay, John. Thanks for that.
I've got a feeling actually that one of the guild things has a significant amount of data from the births, deaths, and marriages as one of the aims.
Indeed.
Okay, let's have a quick. I think we've done how to do that to death. Let's give a quick run down the room. Anything else, Paul, that you'd like to talk about?
Only the thing I mentioned this morning, and you can watch that online.
Yep. Okay. John, anything to add? Any comments you'd like to make at this stage, or anything else?
I'd just like to follow up on this issue of Family Historians Association versus Legacy Root Magics, and I believe also TMG's witnesses, the shared events. I actually don't know how Legacy handles the association, although I assume it handles the association as an event. And that's something I'm going to have to research offline.
Yeah, because you see, if you look at the GEGCOM standard, witness is not a GEGCOM tag. So actually, that must mean that if Legacy makes great use of witness as a tag,
no, that's TMG.
TMG, right? Yeah, if that makes great use of witness, it doesn't appear to me, looking at the various tags here. Mind you, there are pages of them. It certainly isn't wit as within.
No, witness and shared events are not in the 5.5 or 5.51 standard at all.
Yeah,
they're proprietary tags that. I don't think that TMG exports the witness information to GEDCOM. I don't know, Paul. You'll know that better than I.
I'll tell you, mate. I'll have a look.
Okay. But Legacy exports the shared events using a common tag system, as does Roots Magic, and as a result, Darren Lithgow of TNG has agreed to support that tag set in a future release of TNG.
Yeah, this is the problem with proprietary tags, of course, is getting somebody else, another data provider or another application developer to actually support non-standard tags.
The question is that when you have, Roots Magic and Legacy are some of the largest desktop vendors around, And if you're sharing common tags, people would like to be able to implement them in their publishing tool, and Darren recognizes that because he's got a large, basically a large audience of Roots Magic and Legacy users.
Yeah, and of course,
these features.
This is where the JEDCOM standard is so far out of date, and why there's been all sorts of attempts to update it.
Which will never happen.
No, I agree. I don't think it will ever happen. There's too many vested interests in their own software, but that's a personal view.
Well, it has to do with the different data models that the various vendors use, the ability to share an event was to be able to have one started out as so that you could have one copy of a census listing and share it with all the other members of the household without having to, and so that you could edit one copy and update everybody's.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can, John.
How do other people here deal with listing siblings without parents?
You can't.
Well,
what do you mean by listing siblings without parents?
Well, you may know who the siblings are, but not know who the parents are.
That's right.
And that happens on numerous occasions. I mean, I just put in linking parent unknown.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. John, I do something similar.
I've got an awful lot of.
Obviously, they'll share the same surname, so I might have a question mark over the forename, create a file with the same surname, and link the two.
Yeah.
But Ancestral Sources does something else. Now, I haven't worked out how it does it, but Ancestral Sources can link siblings together without generating a blank parent.
Yeah, I don't know how Ancestral Sources does that either. But, yeah, I do it the same way. I just put in no first name and just purely a surname. But of course, the surname can be wrong if they're all illegitimate. So you never know. But yeah, that's how that's my starter for 10, is just a blank surname, blank forename and full surname.
Yeah.
I never use blanks. And I don't maintain spouseless relationships either. I always will put in a placeholder spouse. For instance, if a child is illegitimate and I know the mother, I'll put the father in as a Mr. with my unknown surname character, which is a bracket -- question mark bracket close -- closure bracket, which never is confused with a real surname, because I've never understood the genealogy of the unknown family. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to always have a placeholder individual in for any. So there's always two parents, because they're at least right now they're still required.
What do you do, John, if you've just got say you've got the full name of the father and you've just got the first name of the mother, say from a census record or something? What do you do about her surname? Do you just put her in as Jane and unknown, or Jane question mark? Do you just leave it Jane? What do you do?
Jane unknown, but using my own that's unknown surname string.
I mean, in my case, with my study for Barbados, there's so much illegitimacy that there's no point in putting in a blank parent. There's no way of identifying who the missing parent might be, so I really don't see the benefit in my
DNA.
Case. Well, I'm not going to
DNA is answering a lot of those questions.
Well, I'm not going to DNA test everyone in Barbados to discover who someone unknown is.
Well, I can tell you that with one of the other members of the guild, I ended up with a DNA match with one of my Stedman members to someone with another surname who happened to be the work done by someone in the guild, and we discovered that it was very likely that now we knew the origin of who the parent was of the father was of this unknown illegitimacy, and so yes, DNA is going to unravel some of those illegitimacies in the future, especially for males' illegitimacies.
I don't think so.
Hmm?
I'm not convinced on that score, John. It's all too distant.
Hmm? What do you mean by it? No,
if you actually read some of the DNA stuff, John Lyle, that is, once you get back more than a couple of hundred years, I think, X number of generations, the dilution of the DNA and the loss of DNA is actually quite considerable. And so the further back in time you go, relying on your DNA results, the less accurate they become, is my reading of the data. Bear in mind, I am no DNA expert, but
well,
that is how I read what's being written.
I have families descended from two sons born in the early 1600s, where the DNA, the Y DNA at 67 markers from family tree DNA are virtually identical, with maybe one or two mutations between the two, between the various ones. So dilution can happen and does happen. I don't disagree with you, but you can make some assumptions. And anyway, the issue that we're dealing with has to do with someone who was born in the late 19th century. So there isn't that much time for a dilution.
Okay, and on that note, I think I will stop the broadcast, but we can carry on with the discussion afterwards on other things if you want to. So